Ilara was a 14-year-old who seemed to carry a little bit of sunshine wherever she went, always lost in her own daydreams. She moved through her days as if the world was her own giant art project, and she had all the best supplies. Her laugh was bright and contagious, like the sound of wind chimes on a breezy afternoon, making everyone around her smile. She wore mismatched socks because, as she liked to say, life was way more fun when things didn't always match. To Ilara, the world was full of tiny, amazing things waiting to be noticed. She could spot shapes in spilled coffee and imagine whole stories in the cracks of the sidewalk. Ilara didn't just go through the motions. She really paid attention, filling every moment with her own quiet excitement. She believed that even ordinary days could be magical, even if most people didn't really get it. Her dreams weren't about being famous or rich. They were small, colorful, and just for her. She dreamed of catching a raindrop that had fallen from a cloud shaped like a dragon. She wanted to learn the secret language of birds. She hoped to paint a sunset so real that someone might think it was the actual sky. These little dreams were her treasures, the things that made her so hopeful and happy. Ilara believed dreams weren't just for the future. They could be part of every single day. Her pockets were always stuffed with cool rocks, pretty leaves, and doodles on napkins. In our small, predictable town, her love for little joys made her stand out. She was like a splash of color in a world that sometimes felt a bit too gray. While most people hurried by, Ilara would pause just to watch sunlight shining through the leaves. She noticed beauty in places no one else even looked. She carried a little notebook everywhere, not for homework, but to jot down funny things people said, the color of someone's eyes, or the shape of a cool cloud. Just by being herself, she quietly challenged what everyone thought was normal. Her happiness wasn't loud or showy. It was a gentle, steady glow that came from inside. She seemed to understand something about the world that was both simple and special. She collected moments like other people collected stickers or friendship bracelets, each one a reminder of a life lived with curiosity and kindness. Ilara saw the world not just as it was, but as it could be, full of hidden beauty and little surprises. Her smile was a promise that there was always something to be grateful for, always something new to discover. In a town where everyone walked in straight lines, Ilara, just 14, danced in zigzags. This, of course, made people uncomfortable. They saw her joy as a strange, almost offensive performance. She's just a child, some would say. And this time they were right. She was only 14. She doesn't understand how serious life is. They mistook her gentleness for weakness, her optimism for foolishness. Her colorful scarves and mismatched socks were seen not as expressions of her personality, but as signs that she simply wasn't trying hard enough to fit in. They judged her from a distance, never daring to step into her sunlit world. The whispers followed her like a shadow she refused to acknowledge. At the local market, as she marveled at the vibrant red of a tomato, others would roll their eyes. They saw a vegetable. She saw a tiny, edible jewel. Her constant wonder was interpreted as a lack of focus, a sign that she was detached from the real world. The real world, in their minds, was a place of bills, worries, and endless responsibilities. It was a place Ilara seemed to visit only as a tourist, never as a resident. They couldn't comprehend that her reality was simply different, built on a foundation of gratitude rather than anxiety. Her cheerful greetings were often met with curt nods. Her attempts to share her small discoveries, a four-leaf clover, a perfectly shaped stone, were dismissed with polite but firm disinterest. The townspeople were busy. They had important things to do, and they didn't have time for what they considered to be Ilara's whimsical nonsense. They saw her as a character in a story, not as a person navigating the same complicated world they were. Her happiness was an anomaly, a strange equation they couldn't solve, and so they decided it was better to simply ignore it altogether. It was easier than questioning their own grey existence. They created a narrative for her. She's just naive, they concluded. One day life will hit her, and she'll see. It was a sad, self-assured prophecy, a way for them to protect their own worldview. They needed to believe that her joy was temporary, that it was born from ignorance. The possibility that she saw the same hardships they did, but chose a different response, was too unsettling. So they wrapped her in a story of childish innocence, a story that allowed them to continue their lives uninterrupted, their monochrome world undisturbed by her brilliant, challenging colors. Elara, at just 14, had a peculiar habit. Whenever she met someone, whether a close friend or a passing stranger, she would look them in the eyes, her own sparkling with genuine curiosity, and ask, "Do you have a coffee with your dreams?" The question usually hung in the air, heavy and confusing. People would blink, unsure of how to respond. A coffee with their dreams? What did that even mean? Most would offer a nervous laugh, mumbling something about being too busy for coffee or not being a dreamer. They missed the point entirely, but Elara never seemed disappointed. She would just smile her gentle smile and move on. The question became her signature, a quirky calling card that further cemented her reputation as the town's resident eccentric, despite her young age. It was a strange, poetic inquiry in a world that preferred direct, practical questions. "How are you?" was easy. "Busy," was the standard reply. But "Do you have a coffee with your dreams?" required a moment of introspection, a pause most people were unwilling to take. It was easier to dismiss the question as nonsense than to confront the possibility that they had forgotten what their dreams even were. The question made them feel exposed, as if Elara could see the dusty, neglected corners of their hearts. She asked the grumpy baker, who grunted and turned back to his dough. She asked the tired mailman, who just shook his head and hurried down the street. She asked the high school students who thought it was some kind of joke. Each time the reaction was the same: confusion followed by dismissal. They couldn't see that the question was a gift. It was an invitation to stop, to breathe, and to remember the person they wanted to be. It was a small, quiet rebellion against the relentless march of time, a plea to honor the small sparks of magic within themselves. But Elara persisted. The question was not for them, it was for her. It was her way of sharing her philosophy, of planting a tiny seed of wonder in the hurried lives of others. She believed that everyone had dreams, even if they were buried under layers of responsibility and doubt. Her question was a gentle attempt to help them find their way back to that forgotten part of themselves. She wasn't asking if they had achieved their dreams. She was asking if they were still spending time with them, nurturing them, keeping them company. It was a question about connection, not accomplishment. Then, one autumn day, the wind chimes of Elara's laughter, so often heard on the playground, fell silent. The news spread through the town like a slow, creeping fog. 14-year-old Elara was gone. It was sudden, quiet, and profoundly final. The town, which had so often been annoyed by her youthful energy, felt an immediate and unsettling emptiness. The splash of color was gone, and the gray seemed darker, more absolute. Her absence was a void that no amount of routine or responsibility could fill. People walked the streets and found themselves looking for her, for the flash of a colorful scarf, or the sound of her gentle voice. It was only after she passed that the truth began to surface, whispered in hushed tones at the grocery store and the post office. Elara had been sick. She had been fighting a quiet, lonely battle for years, a battle she never spoke of. The pain she must have felt, the fear she must have carried, she had hidden it all behind her radiant smile and her mismatched socks. The people who had called her naive and childish were forced to confront a devastating reality. Elara's happiness was not born from ignorance. It was a choice, a brave, deliberate, and powerful choice. The town was consumed by a collective sense of shame. They had judged her for her joy, never imagining the strength it took to cultivate it. Her constant wonder was not a sign of detachment, it was her anchor. Her small dreams were not trivial, they were her lifeblood. She had looked at the finite, precious time she had and decided to fill it with as much beauty and light as possible. While they were busy complaining about the rain, she was busy tasting it. Her life was not a performance, it was a masterclass in courage. The silence she left behind was louder than her laughter had ever been. People began to see the world through her eyes. They noticed the way the light hit the old church steeple in the morning. They saw the intricate patterns of a spider's web. They started to understand that the magic she saw was not a figment of her imagination. It had been there all along, waiting to be noticed. Her death became a mirror, forcing everyone to look at their own lives and the choices they were making. They had thought she didn't understand life, but it turned out she understood it better than any of them. Elara's mother, her heart a tangled mess of grief and pride, found the small, worn-out notebook by her 14-year-old daughter's bedside. It was filled with sketches, poems, and fragments of beauty. On the very last page, written in Ilara's familiar looping script, was the answer to the question that had puzzled everyone for so long. It was a letter to the world, a final, gentle explanation. Her mother read it through a blur of tears, the words a balm on her aching soul. It was Ilara's last and most important story, the key to understanding her beautiful, fleeting life. "People always ask me about my dreams," the entry began. "They think dreams are big, faraway things like mountains you have to climb. But my dreams are small. They are here, right now. To have a coffee with your dreams means to sit down with the present moment. It means to savor the warmth of the cup in your hands, to notice the steam dancing in the air. It's about finding the dream in the now. The dream is the taste of a fresh strawberry. The dream is the feeling of the sun on your face. The dream is the kindness in a stranger's eyes. Don't wait for a special occasion to live." Her mother closed her eyes, picturing Ilara asking her question, not as a strange, whimsical girl, but as a wise and gentle teacher. Coffee with dreams was a metaphor for mindfulness, for gratitude, for the radical act of being fully present in a world that constantly pulls you away. Ilara knew her time was limited, so she didn't waste a single drop of it. She drank her coffee slowly. She savored every sip of her life, finding the extraordinary in the ordinary, the universe in a simple cup. Her illness was not her story. Her story was about how she chose to live despite it. Holding the diary to her chest, Ilara's mother finally understood. Her daughter's happiness had been an act of defiance, a rebellion of the heart against the sorrow of her body. She had chosen light in the face of darkness. She had chosen to paint her world with vibrant colors even when she felt gray inside. Her legacy was not in what she had achieved, but in how she had lived. It was a simple, profound lesson. Life is a collection of moments. And if you have a coffee with your dreams every day, you will have lived a full and beautiful life, no matter how long or short it may be.